Hi guys, so today I'm going to give you step-by-step instructions on how to make a keto almond and coconut flour pie crust to use with all your favorite fillings. And be sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell below to be alerted each time I post a new video. I'm really excited to share today's recipe with you today. This took me probably over a year to perfect, and I've been making it ever since then. I use it with all my fillings. I make pumpkin pie, apple pie, and pecan pie. Those are my absolute three favorites. It works well with all three, but you can use it for any recipe you want. It can be used with a baked filling or an unbaked filling, and I'm going to give you all the easy instructions. Okay, so to make this pie crust keto and paleo, we're going to use blanched almond flour, coconut flour, flaxseed, and I like to use golden flaxseed. It doesn't really affect the taste or texture, but it does make it a little bit lighter so it doesn't have those dark specks in it, but you know, whatever you want. The flaxseed, xanthan gum, and if to be completely grain-free, if you're sensitive to xanthan gum, you can replace this with a tablespoon of psyllium husk powder and a little bit of sea salt. And I'm putting all my stuff in a food processor here just because I like the food processor, especially in a minute when we add the butter and egg. It's easier, but if you don't have a food processor, it's no biggie. You can just whisk all the stuff together, cut in the butter, and then stir in the egg, no problem. But since I'm using a food processor, I am going to turn it on to mix all of the ingredients together before we add the other stuff. Okay, so the dry ingredients are mixed, and I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of cold butter. And before I add the other ingredients, I'm going to pulse this in until it kind of gets like coarse sand. And if you don't have a food processor, you need to use 2 forks and cut it in until it's all mixed up, and you can even use your fingers if you want. It might help out. So the butter is cut in, and you can also use non-dairy butter, and you can use shortening. If you use shortening, you might need to add just either a little bit extra water or flour to get the texture perfect, but I'll have directions for that in the description below. Oh, actually, I'm going to have the entire printable recipe in the description below, so if you want to take a look at that. I forgot to mention it earlier. Okay, so now we're going to add an egg and just like a half teaspoon of vanilla. Okay, let's give this a whirl here. So if you notice the crust, it formed a ball in the food processor, and it has the texture of soft Play-Doh. And depending on brands, the different brands that you use, if the dough is kind of like a batter, like a brownie batter or something, it needs a little bit more flour. So add almond flour 1 tablespoon at a time, or if it's dry and crumbly, add cold water 1 tablespoon at a time until it gets this soft Play-Doh texture, or in a food processor, you'll know it's perfect when it forms a ball just like this. And so we need the pie crust to be cold when we roll it out. So I'm going to place this in a Ziploc baggie and put it in the fridge for about 15 minutes to cool off while we make the filling. So the crust has had a chance to cool in the fridge, and I'm going to roll it out on a piece of parchment paper with plastic wrap over the top. And I love using plastic wrap over the top just because it comes off so easily and you can see what you're doing. So I'm going to roll it out plenty big, way bigger than you would think than your pie pan, if that makes any sense. I don't know. So as you're rolling, if you notice that it's not forming a nice pretty circle, you can take pieces off and place them where they need to go to form a better circle, and then just kind of move the parchment paper around and re-roll as needed. I find usually I have actually never made a perfect circle. I always have to rearrange the edges. Mine are always so lopsided. Okay, so I think I have this rolled out pretty well. I'm just going to invert it over a greased pie pan. it over here. Okay, so when you pull the parchment paper off, it's definitely not going to be perfect, and the colder it is, the less it will stick. And mine has gotten pretty warm, so it's like a little worse than normal, but usually, you know, it's okay. It's not perfect, but it's okay. And you just patch up the cracks, and then I take all the extras off, or the extra dough on the edges, and I'll show you what I do with those. So move this out of the way. And I take this extra dough right here, and I like to make a pretty edge with them. So I kind of do the same thing. I put it back on the parchment paper with the plastic wrap on top, and I roll it out. So now that it's rolled out, I'm going to take the parchment paper back off. I'm going to use a pizza cutter, and I'm going to just cut it into strips. And these strips are going to make pretty edges on the pie. Ideally, they should all be the same size. These are all over the place, but oh, that one's totally crooked. But we'll just patch it up. Okay, so let's put the pie back over here. And I take the little edges and I just stick them on like this. And you want nice thick edges on the crust, like this. And this will make them even, and so you'll have nice even decoration all the way around. Okay, so I have the edges going all the way around. Ideally, they should be nice and even. I did mine kind of wonky, but you know, that's okay. It'll be unique or rustic. I like to call things rustic when they're not exactly perfect. And so then you can just take your thumb and finger and just kind of do a little crinkle all the way around, just like this. Actually, go this way. Okay, so just touch it up however you would like, and you don't have to do a crinkle. You can do any decorative effects that you want. And then I'm going to take a fork, poke some holes in the bottom, and we're going to bake it for 15 to 20 minutes at 350 degrees. Oh, along with the crust protector. Let me grab the crust protector. So I already have one made here, and we're just going to wrap it all the way around the pie, secure it with a safety pin, and fold it over the edges because you don't want the edges to burn. And we're going to pre-bake this for 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll add the filling and continue baking it. So the pie crust just came out of the oven because remember we did a keto pie crust and it always needs to be pre-baked. So now we're just going to put this delicious pumpkin pie filling in. That's also keto friendly. And to keep the edges from burning, we need to put this back on. Just a homemade crust protector out of foil. And secure it with a paper clip here. And we're going to bake this at 375 degrees for about 15 minutes. And then without opening the oven, we're just going to lower the temperature to 300 degrees and it'll finish baking around 40, maybe 50 minutes, depending on your oven. And you'll know it's done because you'll be able to put a knife about 1 or 2 inches away from the crust and pull it out, and it'll be mostly clean. It doesn't have to be squeaky clean, just mostly clean. And the center will still be slightly jiggly. So the pie finished baking, and then I let it cool, and I put it in the fridge overnight so it could get nice and firm. And I just can't wait to try it. I'm going to put a little bit of whipped cream on the top here. And I have a coconut whipped cream recipe also on my blog. I'll put a link to in the description below. Sprinkle it with a little bit of cinnamon because it's just so pretty. Now my very favorite part, getting to eat it. So for the pumpkin pie filling, all you're going to need is pure pumpkin. And you don't want to get pumpkin pie filling because it will already have all the ingredients in there and it's definitely not keto friendly. You want pure pumpkin and 2 eggs, keto-friendly sweetener. I'm using xylitol. I prefer xylitol or allulose for this recipe because they don't leave an aftertaste. And erythritol in custards, it can make the custards crack and leave a white film on top. It doesn't taste bad. It tastes fine, but it's just not as pretty. And so I like xylitol or allulose. And if you do only have an erythritol-based sweetener, if that's all you can find, to get rid of that white film on top, you can just take some sugar-free maple syrup and brush it over the top, and no one will be the wiser. Okay, and to make this dairy-free, we're going to use full-fat canned coconut milk. If you're not dairy-free, feel free to use heavy whipping cream. For the spices, we have cinnamon, of course, cloves, ginger, nutmeg, sea salt, and pure vanilla. So that's all there is to making a keto pie filling. You just have the ingredients and mix them together, and it really is easy as pie. And then all you do is pour it into your crust and bake it.